Well, thank you.
Like
so
everything is a lot
you've
more
accepted
than the
that
past
what I'm saying is objectively true. I'm grateful.
Correct, yes. As a meaningless statement, but yes.
Now that we've got there, what does it mean? Well, first of all, think about it like this. And again, it's not about whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, or a bad thing. The three biggest cities in this country in the last 30 years have ceased to be majority inhabited by the people who are native
crashed.
to this land.
Refresh if you got
And I am one of the people who's come here in that time. So I'm not saying it's only a terrible thing, but it's an objective fact. The three biggest cities in the country are now majority minority. London, and this has happened very quickly. London was 80% white British in 1991. It is probably around 30% white British today. So if you have seen that level of change in the city in which you live, think about this as well. 3/4 of the people who live in this country today are over the age of 35. So all of this has happened within the lifetime of one generation, effectively. That is a level of change that is A, completely unprecedented, B, extremely transformative, whether you like it or not, good or bad, whatever you may think. You might think, oh, you know, the amount of different kinds of food.
But he keeps doing this shit where he really just wants to... how do I put the fucking... Fuck, I'm losing it. It's my damn chicken and fries. He's railroading the argument into a moral one while trying to act like he's not. He feels the need to mention that shit, that he finds it destructive. Even though he keeps saying, like, whether you think it is or isn't. And also, he starts now appealing to a lot by comparing it to other populations. That doesn't really work either. A lot is to signify impact. Or sustainable load. And he's unable to do that.
Better. It's true, objectively. But it's also true, objectively, that entire swathes of this city are no longer inhabited by the people who used to live here. Again, this is an objective fact. You can like it, you can dislike it, but that is something that has happened. This is true of London, it's true of Manchester, it's true of Birmingham, and it's true of several other smaller cities in this country. By 2060, according to current projections, white British people will become a minority in this country. 2060 is the next 35 years, right?
Becoming a minority doesn't dictate a lot.
The entire kind of demographic transformation. These are facts. Forget about people's opinions, my opinion, your opinion. In terms of illegal immigration, there are now almost 1 million, we don't know exactly because it's hard to measure, but we have almost 1 million illegal immigrants in Britain today, which for a population of 70 million is quite a lot. We currently spend £14 million a day I'm not talking about the cost to the taxpayer of having 1 million illegal immigrants here. I'm talking about how much we spend to accommodate them and all other things. Now, 14 million, is that a lot per day? It's quite a lot. But also this is happening...
We're just saying, like, yep, 14 million a day, that's a lot.
More people come to Britain...
Compared to what? What other countries do this? What does that look like for them? How much money does Britain have? How much of a percentage of their budget is this? How detrimental is this spending on what? And how can you directly show that?
Illegally today than came legally when I came here in 1996. I'll say that again. More people come here illegally every year than came here in 1996 when I came here. That's the level of change when it comes to illegal immigration, and the cost of it, £14 million a day, is increased by a factor of 10 in the last 10 years alone. So it's 1,000% more than what it was. Those are the facts about immigration. So when we talk about immigration and whether it's compatible with national identity, it depends what we mean. If we're talking about, 20, 30, 40,000 people a year, highly selected from compatible cultures as it used to be, perfectly compatible, and in fact, I think probably quite desirable. If we're talking about what we've seen over the last 30 years, I don't think it's compatible with any sort of national identity at all. Now, I've been talking for a long time, so we can get to national identity after you've addressed that.
Sure. So I guess the thing that is a little bit strange to me about the immigration question is that sometimes I'll hear a bunch of descriptions laid out, and I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do with them. There's oftentimes a lack of a prescriptive statement. It seems like there's a little bit of fear of committing to any particular idea about what an ideal immigrant would look like. And then it feels like we're sometimes also lumping a ton of immigrants together. So for instance, when we say there have been so many more immigrants that have come here in the past 30, 35 years, but then we also mention like illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, these are all different groups of people. So I don't know why.
I separated them out. I talked about legal immigration and illegal immigration, right?
I understand, but so the prompt has to do with basically can a country's culture, whatever, survive mass migration? Illegal immigrants are not mass migrating here. The mass migration.
They are. So I just told you more illegal immigrants come here every year now than legal immigrants came here 30 years ago.
I understand that, but if you look at
they are mass migrating.
So then are the legal ones mass migrating, or what? Is it just...
The legal immigrants are also mass migrating. It's possible for them both to be mass migrating.
But it's like 10 to 1. Right? So comparing the two, it seems like we're talking about different kinds of... We're probably talking about different kinds of immigrants. When we talk about legal versus illegal...
We're talking about both, yeah.
Well, no.
I'm talking about both.
You don't see any difference between a legal immigrant versus an illegal immigrant?
Well, of course I do.
Okay.
But they are both mass migrating here. They're both coming here in unprecedented numbers.
Everything definitionally is unprecedented as you move forward in years. We have an unprecedented amount of technology, an unprecedented amount of energy generation, an unprecedented amount of...
I think you might be confused about the meaning of the word unprecedented.
Unprecedented as in it hasn't happened at that level before. Yeah.
Right. So if we have immigration of 20,000 people a year, that wouldn't be unprecedented because we had that before.
Yeah, but the population is growing of the country, the population of the rest of the planet is growing, the economy is growing, there's a whole bunch of other factors at play. It's not like all else equal, there's just 10 million people that have shown up. Like, there's other factors at play at all points in time as well. So yes, it's a bit reductive to say, like, well, we have an unprecedented wave of whatever. There's unprecedented things happening definitionally every year forward into the future we go.
No, that's not true.
What's the thing that's been frozen in time?
I just explained it to you.
Yes, you laid out a bunch of numbers, and I just explained why they're contextless and meaningless. But now I'm asking, what is the thing that's unprecedented? Look, or I'm sorry, what would be a thing that is not changing in the past 30 years? Like, if you had to look at something.
One of the most amazing things of arguing with anybody from your position is the extent to which they refuse to understand what words mean. I just explained to you repeatedly what unprecedented means. It means that it hasn't happened before. There have been times in the history of this country when its immigration was in the tens of thousands, and for us to go back to that would not be going forward to something unprecedented. It would be returning to something that we used to do.
Sure.
Right?
And my question
is, so what has happened in the last 30 years is unprecedented.
Is there anything in U.S. culture, in British culture, that has remained the same for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years, for the past 100 years, that doesn't have an unprecedented thing happening constantly?
Absolutely. I mean, that is what a culture is. It is what is preserved over time.
How?
A culture is what people do without having been told to do so by a law.
But what is an example of a culture that is unchanging?
How much have you traveled around the world?
Probably more than you?
Probably not, actually.
Okay. So then you should be able to very easily answer. Here's an example of a culture that exists.
Every time I try and answer your question, you keep talking over me.
Well, it's because when you answer, you ramble and say irrelevant things. So my question is,
how can I ramble in half a sentence?
You've been saying plenty of sentences. Do you think the speaking time up to this point is even, or do you think you've spoken more than me?
You ramble and say irrelevant things. There's two things. That's a two-parter. You ramble and you say irrelevant things. Those are the two reasons I am interrupting you. And he chooses one reason that he can feel like he can contradict. The ramble thing with the half sentence. Just completely ignoring the second part, saying irrelevant things. These people don't like fucking answering questions or being conversational. They like monologuing. And conversation trees.
I have spoken more than you, but I haven't interrupted you.
So then you had an opportunity to speak. You're just not answering my question. So my question is very simple. What's a culture that you feel has been unchanged for the past 50 years? Or what is an example of cultural preservation? I feel like cultures are evolving all the time. It's definitionally a part of culture.
Of course. Cultures are evolving all the time. But if you were to be plonked in 1970s Afghanistan and 1990s Afghanistan and 2010s Afghanistan and 1950s Britain, 1970s Britain and 2010s Britain, there would be common themes that run through both of those places so that you would instantly recognize, I am in Afghanistan, I am in Britain. Would you accept that?
I agree that different cultures are different, yes.
Right, well done. Good. So we've got there then.
Well, you just established that there are. This is like saying
different
that
cultures are different, which means that they
wasn't
have
the
something
question.
about them
Yes, and
that makes them different.
If
right?
you have a brother, both of you will be different for your entire lives. But that
there
doesn't
would
mean,
be a family culture that you have that's different to other families.
But you wouldn't be the same as you were when you were 10 years old.
No,
you
you
would grow
wouldn't.
and change,
Of
right?
course.
So when you talk about
but
preserving
you're still the same
culture,
person, right?
What?
You're still the same person.
Yeah, but you're dramatically changed.
But you're still the same.
And this is dumb. I'm kind of glad they didn't have this argument because Constantine's gonna be so fucking brain dead on this. But Theseus ship. If I have a ship and I take it out to sea a bunch, and every time I come back to port, I have to replace a few parts, and eventually every single part on the boat has been replaced. Is it still the same boat? Yes and no. It depends on what we're saying constitutes the thing. And our language is shit, so both ideas could constitute the thing. The original piece as it was, and the idea of the ship that I take to sail. So I'm a little annoyed that they brushed past it because I like the topic, but I'm actually also a little grateful because I can tell he's brain broken on it.
You the same as you were 10 or 15 years ago? What do you mean by that? The same. You're not unchanged, right?
Are you pretending to be a moron or are you actually being one?
So
and look at this pivot. After his own moronicity, I'll make up a dumb word for that. When he's in the hot seat, immediately he's like, okay, hold on. Are you being a moron right now? Like, you're the one wearing a tie, motherfucker. Is this a formal debate? What the hell is your issue? If he's being so stupid, just formally own him on it.
Our claim was that we need to preserve
More signs of weakness.
culture because cultures aren't supposed to change. And then
no, that's not my claim.
Okay, then help me understand. So
I will.
Because if you don't
interrupting
remember,
me.
this whole topic started with, I'm curious, what is the thing that is precedented? What's the thing that happens continuously through all of history that isn't changing? And then you pointed to the fact that Afghanistan and the United Kingdom are different cultures. Like, that's something that I would reject.
No, I didn't. I was just explaining to you what cultures are, which are the cultural differences between groups of people that remain fairly constant over time, despite changing somewhat, as all cultures do.
Your definition of culture is the difference between your culture and another culture?
No, I gave you my definition.
You just said it was the differences between cultures that change over time that define one culture against another one.
Okay, let's reset. And you talk for a bit, and then I talk for a bit, and then you talk for a bit.
Well, no, because I noticed that this is how it feels like a lot of these types of people, the centrists, the reformers, the MAGA, whatever, is you paint with such broad brushstrokes that by the end of a sentence, I feel like you haven't really said much at all. And I'm just kind of curious why, when you guys speak about things like the preservation of culture, I don't really hear you allude to anything concrete. Or when you talk about wanting to preserve something, you talk about how something has changed. I don't necessarily hear, like, what are the things that are changing that you don't like. You'll point to things like crimes, but I mean, like, crimes are illegal. Obviously, they shouldn't be happening. I just don't really hear anything concrete ever, and it's very unsatisfying to listen to a bunch of people kind of ramble on and on and on without ever having a clear point about what they're talking about. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, for British or American culture, what are these things that you feel are common, maybe you go back 30, 40, 50 years, that were common across the whole country that you feel are changing in a way that they never changed in the past?
Okay, done?
Are you going to answer that question? He's not going to answer the question. Go ahead.
I've attempted to answer your question many times, and I'll do so again. However, first of all, am I going to be okay to speak now for a bit? Is that going to happen?
Sure. Can you repeat my question first so I know what you're...
Your question is about what is culture. You brought up crime.
That wasn't my question. My question is, over the past 30 or 40 years, what are things that have changed in America?
Destiny was going to be kind enough to give him, like, space and room in this little... and, like, appease his little hissy fit. And he can't even give him the question back. Like, there's zero good faith in this conversation. This conversation is already gone to shit. This conversation's already in the red 17 minutes in, and it's a 2-hour conversation. Like, it's...
American or British culture,
This shit's just so
the past
sad.
200 years before that, were unchanging.
Okay. One of the things that has changed in Britain over the last 30 years is we now have extensive number of Islamist terrorist attacks, mass stabbings, mass rape of British girls by Islamist and Muslim grooming gangs. This is not something that happened in this culture before.
Okay, so sexual
So
assault and
that-
rape did happen before in
Did you hear the
culture,
words
right?
I said, or did
So
you
you said
take
grooming gangs. I know there's the example from the 80s and 90s of the Rotherham
They're not from the
grooming
80s,
gang.
90s. They're happening right now.
What is another grooming gang example? Because I know there are rapes and stuff that happen, but I don't think there are...
Yeah, well, let me explain it to you. So grooming gangs, this is a euphemism that we use to pretend that they're not what they are mass rape gangs where young British girls, usually underage, but also often sometimes young women, would be plied with drugs, plied with alcohol, would be taken from the care homes where they were, predominantly by Pakistani, sometimes other Indian subcontinent Muslims. They would be targeted primarily because they were white and British, so these were racially aggravated hate crimes. And they would be mass raped over periods of years sometimes. That did not used to happen in Britain.
So
That is a cultural
it did used
change.
to happen.
Can I
'cause the
finish
big-
what I'm saying,
Okay,
please?
you're not going to answer my question. Okay.
I am answering your question.
Well, but my question
That is
was,
a
what
cul-
are examples? I don't think this has happened outside of the Rotherham grooming gang, that whole scandal. There have been rapes, there have been gang rapes, but the idea of like a coordinated grooming gang type mass Pakistani targeting British girls rapes, that type of thing is not a thing that I'm aware.
I'm kind of lost here, too. Is this what we're using to...
Well, I don't know.
constitute
I
a
think the
lie?
fact that somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million British girls might have been raped by these gangs is quite a big deal. And it
How ma-
represents
dude,
a
sorry,
change in
what?
the culture
How
of
many
this country that
people?
makes quite
I never said it wasn't a big deal. I think rape is bad.
represents 1 million.
That type of thing is not a thing that I'm aware has been seen in Britain outside of the large Rotherham scandal.
So, well, I don't know. I think the fact that somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million British girls might have been raped by
500,000
these
and a
gangs is quite big
million.
deal, and it represents a change in the culture of this country that I think is quite
I never
unwelcome.
said it wasn't a big deal. I think rape is bad. I just think it's bad when white people do it too. I think it's bad when everybody does it. My
That's
understanding is right now for
unfathomable.
the crime stats in the United Kingdom.
What is the
it tends to be
population
more
size of
white
fucking
people have been
Britain?
overrepresented in terms of sexual assault and rape, but I'm aware that there are immigrants that rape people as well. I think all rape is bad, but the idea that there is a mass Islamist jihadist
69.
rape
So you're telling me
centered
1
thing
in
the
50
United Kingdom
women is
functioning, I
getting
think
How
is-
many-
caught by
how
this
many
shit.
girls would have to be raped for you to admit that it's a mass thing?
the question isn't if it's a mass
Well,
thing. The
if
question is if it's
half a
organized.
Is this
million
really
girls-
just this theory?
Definition.
Like,
Sorry,
what
let's
the
keep
fuck?
If
You're-
half a
you're not
million
understanding.
girls-
You're not following the conversation.
Stephen, you've
Rape
gotta-
is bad,
if
but
half a million-
organized
let-
grooming gang
You've asked
rape
me a
is
lot of
that's a different
questions, and
thing.
every time I answer
Well,
them,
you're
you
not
ignore my
answering really
answer.
at all, but
Now
go ahead.
answer my question.
Yeah.
Answer my question. If 500,000 girls have been mass raped in this way, specifically being targeted because they were not of a particular religion or ethnicity, how many of them would have to be treated in this way for you to admit that it's a mass thing? What's the number that makes a mass? Answer my
the
question.
Wasn't. I don't know.
The
how you
answer-
would
I should've
wrote down
identify
the topic
it as a
Give us a
again.
mass
number.
thing.
Give us a
The question
number.
was
Give
organized
us a
grooming.
number. You said
500,001. So you're right. You're right beneath the threshold. Maybe tomorrow
Well,
you'll
it's-
have it.
it's actually-
So the question is
it's
there
actually
organized?
between it's 500,000
Okay,
and
so
1 million.
okay, I'll ramble for a
you've
second and then
agreed
you
that
can
it's
ramble
mass.
afterwards.
So you
We're not gonna
agree
go back
that
and
it's
forth. My
mass.
issue is because you guys do this thing over and over again where you won't accurately identify a problem. You'll invent these things because rape isn't bad enough. Now it has to be like a mass grooming gang rape thing. And then what happens is you conservatives, you play this game where you falsely identify a problem, you lie to the audience about it, and then you manage to gain power. You go through with some wacky scheme. Go figure, the wacky scheme doesn't fix anything, and then somehow you come back with the same recycled narratives over and over again, asking for another shot at it. It's happening right now with Farage and reform. It happened with Brexit. Brexit didn't reduce immigration. It didn't help you with your economy. It didn't do anything really good for the United Kingdom at all. And then it's happening now with reform coming in and making all of these promises to the British people that you're going to be able to cut all of the revenue.
Because it's about cultural erasure, right?
Funding, you're going to
As fucked up as this shit is that really cultural erasure? If that starts happening with, like, and that's not in your culture, technically. That wouldn't be in your national identity. That would be something you reject from your national identity on site. Like any nation or culture would. So I don't think this really constitutes national identity or erasure of it.
Of a no-wait NHS, and it's all built on the same lies over and over again that didn't help you affect any positive outcomes in the past, and it's not going to help you affect any positive outcomes in the future. You can sit here and you can be upset about it, but I watched you and Matt Goodwin debate on stage where you guys both made the bold prediction that once the Tories were out, your immigration numbers would be over 1 million per year. They plummeted to 300,000. I haven't heard you say anything about that. Your predictions were completely wrong, just as they were with Brexit as well.
But
Well, that was a wonderful presentation. The problem for you is I voted Remain in the referendum.
Because you hadn't been bullied by the Cambridge students yet. I'm aware of the history, but I know.
So, you've come here with a bunch of talking points. That's great.
Hold on. We can break down
Stephen,
anything you want.
stop interrupting.
Don't accuse me of having talking points.
Stop
Deal with my
interrupting.
arguments.
Stop interrupting.
Then address what I
Stop
said.
interrupting.
Address
stop
what I said.
interrupt. Stop interrupting. Stop interrupting. Stop interrupting. Stop interrupting.
Stop interrupting.
Stop interrupting.
I let
Stop
you talk,
interrupting.
and I let you make your
It did
points.
not run.
Have some respect for me and for my opportunity to express myself as well. That is how a debate is conducted, so stop interrupting. We started this with a conversation about mass immigration, and I gave you the fact.
He's deciding that's how a debate is conducted. There is no one way a debate is conducted. There are, inside of debates, there are different conversational formats. There's speeches where you are given an allotted amount of time on your own to just give a speech. There's crossfire, where both parties can ask each other questions and answer back and forth. There's solo crossfires, I'm forgetting the proper name for that, but like where one person is asking questions and the other person is answering. And then across different debate formats, how stringent you have to be about those rules varies. And I'm just thinking of high school debate. I've seen way more forms of debate online. And this is a conversation/debate. So they should, I think, in a conversation, you have the room to interrupt each other. And in certain forms of debate, you have the room to interrupt each other. And no moderation is stepping in and telling Destiny that he's going, or not letting Constantine get anything out. So there's not a damn thing wrong with him interrupting.
Facts on it, and I defined what immigration is, right? Mass immigration. Now, you're talking about culture. I also explained to you what culture is, and I explained it to you by explaining that it's a continuity of certain things, which may also evolve over time. Now, in terms of your point about mass immigration since Brexit, I was not a supporter of Brexit. I didn't think it was necessarily a good idea. And I agree with you that it hasn't reduced immigration. But I don't see how that's relevant to this conversation. We have had mass immigration happen in this country continually over a long period of time, which has changed the country in the way that I gave you. And I gave you a number of examples, like Islamist terrorism, like grooming gangs and other things, which I don't think you're able to address because they counteract the argument that you keep making, which is, well, nothing changes when you bring in 8 million people over 30 years.
Did I say that?
Can I finish, please?
Did I say that?
Can
Why do
I
you have
finish?
to invent?
Can I
Can I
finish?
finish, please?
You just can't address anything.
Can I
say?
finish,
Okay.
please? If I
Pretend it's
interrupted
a
you,
podcast
if I
episode. Go ahead.
interrupted you every
Make up
time you
positions for me.
misrepresent my
Go for
argument,
it.
you'd never talk at
Go
all.
for it. Okay.
So can I finish, please? You made the point that basically what I'm trying to say is, not trying to say, what I'm saying is when you bring in large numbers of people into a country from a different culture, that will necessarily change the culture. The other thing that I explained to you is there's been such a large wave of immigration into this country now that has fundamentally changed the sense of British people about the place in which they live. It is affecting the demographic dynamics of major cities in this country and the way people feel about that. But all of those things, the facts that I gave you about immigration, they are what they are. You can think that they're good, you can think that they're bad. That is a separate conversation. The facts are what they are. right? There's also a thing about how British people feel about it. When I came to this country in 1996, 3% of the British public thought that immigration was a major concern. Today, about 65 to 70% of British people say that there are too many immigrants in this country and too many immigrants coming here. Now, I think British people probably have a better idea of how they feel about immigration than you, Stephen, and that is how they feel.
Why do you think over half the British population believes that the majority of the immigrants here today are here illegally, if they've got such a great handle on it or a great idea about what immigration is doing to the country?
The reason that people overestimate immigration is people generally, when asked about things, overestimate pretty much everything or underestimate things terribly because people are not very good with numbers. But the other reason, of course, people aren't able to quote you the exact number of people who
I didn't ask for a quote of the exact
We
number.
do this on
I said
occasion.
earlier,
I like
and I'm
watching a
addressing
debate
your
and
broader
breaking
point,
them
which is
down.
why do people misunderstand the
If I
immigration
see one that I
statistics?
think is
that people don't
interesting
look at
enough
immigration as
to go
this is
over
the
with
number
chat.
of people who came this year and this is a number of people who came last year. They look at the reality of their lives, they look at the change they see around them, and what they're really concerned about is the cumulative impact of immigration over the period of their lifetime, which, as I explained to you, has been huge, unprecedented over the last 35 years, and will be even more unprecedented in terms of its cumulative impact over the next 35 years. Now, it's true that immigration has come down to 300 or something thousand in the last year. Doesn't mean it will stay that way, but also I never predicted it would get to 1 million. I think Matt did. But the point I would make is the transformation over a 30-year period is what people actually care about, and which is what they're right to care about. Now, as for the point about illegal immigration, yeah, it's true. Illegal immigration is a smaller percentage of the total immigration that we have than legal immigration, but it's still higher today than it was 35 years ago and 30 years ago, which is way too high. Illegal immigration should be zero. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Do we have any final thoughts before we move on to the next?
Yeah, I mean, every crime should be zero, but there's always going to be some amount of crime or some amount of illegal immigrants. I guess the issue I have is that, you say, why do the British people not understand the exact numbers? I didn't ask for the exact numbers. It's like 10 or 11 million to 1 million. There are different estimates from 500,000 to 1.3 million or whatever illegals. That's a big ratio, 10 to 1 to be off by, to assume it's 50-50, or that there are more illegals than there are legal immigrants here. And I think the issue is people in your position or people like
I'm not
Reform
using
or
a fucking
depending on
silk
how right you
touch
want to go, lie constantly about the immigrant population in the United Kingdom, and then as a result of selling those lies to the people, you get these ridiculous plans or attempts to fix it all in the United Kingdom. And because the problem was never as severe as it was stated in the first place, the problem ends up not being solved, and then you exacerbate other problems. So at the end of the Tory government with this attempt with like the Rwanda plan, this idea that you're going to ship people to other countries to have them processed first, or with the idea that leaving Brexit would give the UK greater control over their illegal immigrant population. And the reality is it did just the opposite. You didn't have the right to access the same people that would try to claim asylum.
I love
in the
me
EU, and then
some
if they
debate.
were rejected once there, to send them back if they came to Britain next. You lost access to a lot of these things. And then the same people that were in charge of pushing
So we need to get this
ideas
farm running
are now
again like I
telling
just
you
got,
and selling you on the idea that
because
reform
I
is gonna
need
come in
magma
and
cream
somehow
for more magma
fix the
cube
very
blocks
same
so we
issues
can
that
make a
they've
gold
been
farm.
lying about and have failed to fix in the past. And you might hear this talking point, this cope that, well, reform is different. We're not going to be like the old conservatives. But then you've got all your politicians are going to be MP Tories that are defecting to join the new Reform Party. So I don't know where all this new blood is going to come from. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like a whole bunch of like, here's a fake problem. I'm going to put it in front of you. There is like a real problem here. Regardless of what you said earlier, I don't think rapes are good, mass rapes or normal rapes. I think there should be some probably cap on what type of immigrants and how many should come to the country. I just never really hear a discussion on any of that. I just hear 500,000 British girls have been gang raped by mass grooming gangs, and it wasn't like that when I came over in '96, despite the fact that those Rotherham grooming gang scandals started in the '80s. So I don't feel like I ever hear anything of substance being spoken about.
Well, it's a pity we didn't have someone from Reform on stage so you could rehash your Wikipedia talking points to them.
You're a Reform voter, though, right?
No, I've never
Really?
voted. I've never voted for Reform.
Would you vote for Reform in the upcoming election?
Depends on who stands in my constituency. Last election, I voted for a Liberal Democrat.
I didn't ask about last election. In the
Okay.
upcoming election, will you vote for Reform?
I will probably vote for the same person who's a Liberal Democrat.
Okay, so you don't think you would support the Liberal Reform guy I don't know in your
Liberal
constituencies.
reform. There's no party called liberal
Or, I'm sorry,
reform.
you won't support the reform candidate in whatever upcoming election. I don't know what constituency you live in.
I just told you that at the last election I voted for Liberal Democrat.
Yeah, I know, but the
and
reason
at
why
the
you're saying that is because you won't answer for the next one.
Stop
You're
interrupting.
totally question
Stop
dodge.
interrupting. Stop interrupting.
Yeah, go for it.
Stop
I just told you
interrupting.
that at the last election I voted for Liberal Democrat, and at the next election I intend to vote for him as well.
I'm just curious. You said in the past that you regret, or not that you regret, that you voted Remain for Brexit. Do you think that was a good vote? Do you think you should have remained, or do you think Brexit was a mistake?
I don't regret my vote for Remain, no.
Do you think Brexit was a mistake?
I'm
I'm going to go back and find that.
A lot.
I want to hear the
Survive
topic again.
open immigration.
I
Hope this conversation
I was
tonight,
just
when
on it.
shared with the world, or not to the. Can national identity survive open immigration?
guess I'll.
Can
yeah, I'll
national
take the-
identity survive open immigration? Or over immigrate? What? That's weird wording
Yeah,
for a
I'll-
topic.
Can national identity survive open immigration?
I guess I'll. Yeah, I'll take
go for it.
the. Yeah, I'll kind of take the reins on this.
They never even get to define what open immigration is. They just agree to let it be a lot, and then they don't even get to agree on what a lot is. And yeah, no, if the argument's only let's see, the population overtake argument kind of stands. But then again it doesn't, because Destiny already counters it with they mold and change over time on their own in their own right and in reflection of other cultures. And then the whole mass gang rape thing. It's bad. Like, yeah, it's bad, but it's not cultural erasure or national identity erasure. And that's just the first topic.
Yeah, go for it.
I just told you that at the last election I voted for Liberal Democrat, and at the next election I intend to vote for him as well.
I'm just curious. You said in the past that you regret, or not that you regret, that you voted Remain for Brexit. Do you think that was a good vote? Do you think you should have remained, or do you think Brexit was a mistake?
I don't regret my vote for Remain, no.
Do you think Brexit was a mistake?
I think it had its negatives and positives, yeah. Like,
Are you sure you're not running for a political party right now? Because that was the most politician answer I've ever heard in my life. Do you think that on net was Brexit a mistake?
Every decision has trade-offs that are positive and negative.
Remember what I said earlier about saying words that mean nothing? Obviously, this is true. But I'm
No,
asking, do you think that Brexit on net, was it a mistake?
I think a lot of people think that Brexit ruined the economy.
I'm not asking what a lot of people think. I'm asking you on net. Do you think that Brexit was a mistake?
I think it had some things that made things worse, and I think it had some that...
If you were God and you could choose whether or not the UK voted 51% Brexit or 49% Brexit, what would you push the button to have had them vote? 51% they would Brexit, or 49% and then they would remain in the European Union?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, but so the reason why I asked this question is to illustrate. I asked this question to illustrate how frustrating it is when people like you say things like, well, I voted Liberal last election, or I voted Remain. Okay, you don't stand by that anymore, though. You constantly do this thing. No, you don't. You constantly do this thing where you come on stage, or you go on your show and you'll say things like, I used to be a liberal, but the liberals have changed so much, or I used to be a left-leaning person. And the left, I know you've tweeted the dumb picture. I know you've done it. They've changed so much, and now I have to identify with the center-right. I've heard you literally say things like Tommy Robinson makes statements to the left on immigration compared to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
He does.
Yeah, okay.
He does.
I've heard you say
That's a
statements like that,
fact.
right? But then when
That's a
I ask,
fact.
but then you guys say that everybody else has changed, and then I ask you about your past political votes, you won't defend them. So it seems like you're the one that's
do
changed,
defend-
which is fine, but you should just own that.
I voted Remain for reasons that were entirely different from the reason that most people voted Remain. The reason I voted Remain is I thought that it would weaken Europe's ability to stand up to Russia. I think I've been proven right on that. And I think the division within Europe has made Europe weaker in terms of its ability to stand up to Russia, and I think we've seen that. So in that respect, I think I was right to vote Remain. What I don't agree with is the narrative that a lot of people like to spin, that Brexit ruined the economy. I don't think that's true at all. If you look at the way other European economies are performing, they're performing even worse than the British economy. So my attempt to give you a nuanced answer is not my refusal to stand by my votes. It's an attempt to use my brain and give you a nuanced answer. Now, in terms of final, did you want to wrap up and move on?
Yeah, just final thoughts on this topic. That would be great, guys.
Yeah, so final thoughts on this topic. I would just recap and maybe add one other thing. We have had a level of mass immigration into Britain that has been extremely disruptive over a fairly short period of time, that has created an environment in which major cities in this country are effectively no longer the domain of the native population of this country, which is very disruptive to the people who've lived here. I'm not one of them. I myself am an immigrant, but I totally recognize that that's happened. I think culturally there have been some terrible things that have happened. I mean, the example of terrorism and grooming gangs is just one of them. But the failure of integration more broadly has been a big problem, to the point where you now saw in the by-election in Gorton Denton, the Green candidate campaigning in Urdu, in a foreign language, in a language not of our country, which I think is a signal of the terrible divisiveness that is we are likely to see in other communities or in other constituencies where some communities haven't integrated at all. And I think what that signals is a democracy works when people vote on the ideas that are being offered to them, not the ethnic and religious background of the candidate or the things that they will tell them. And I think you're increasingly seeing that. So all of these things are big worries to me. And of course, a lot of this would have been much easier to manage if we hadn't also at the same time had the doctrine of diversity, inclusion, and multiculturalism, which have, instead of creating a monoculture into which people are encouraged to buy in and integrate, have instead created a society in which people are encouraged to see themselves as members of an individual community, which I think is essentially the end of a democratic process the way we've understood it to this point. So I think these are all terrible developments, and if this continues, it will only get worse.
Thank you.
I mean, we introduced new things, so
There's another trick to this conversation, too. If a culture's culture adopts multiculturalism, if a culture adopts multiculturalism into itself, the culture is now multicultural. Which is the identity.
I don't know where I don't know what the monoculture is.
How many final thoughts are we going to have?
Well, I mean, when we introduce new concepts like DEI was why Liz Truss, helped 700,000 people come to this country from mainly non.
True, he just snuck that shit in.
DEI was the policy there from the Tories that enabled all that mass migration. And when we talk about the monoculture,
you're right,
I don't know about the United Kingdom. I mean, Scottish people don't seem like they share a monoculture with English people. I feel like rural people and city people don't have much of a monoculture. I don't know if they've ever had a monoculture. I know in the United States, we talk all the time about the difference between city slickers and the good old people in the country and doing the farms and everything. But then we're also simultaneously very concerned about demographic change in the cities. But then at every other point, it seems like the country-related people hate the urban-related culture anyway. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting at some point, maybe at some time in your life, if you ever wanted to dive into these issues for real, maybe on your show or with somebody you're more comfortable with who won't challenge you as much. It'd be interesting to hear a conversation about what do these values look like. When you talk about changing culture, and the answer is, well, some people bring crime. That's not culture. That's like changing culture would require you to identify some fundamental aspect of the culture of a country, and then change, and then to point out to how that fundamental aspect is changing. When you say immigrants are coming and a lot of them commit crime, it's not really a real answer. It's not very satisfying. It's not really getting to the heart of the issues. And
shall we move on to wokeism?
Sure.
So the question is, speaking of culture, has wokeism caused harm to the political climate?
Do you want to go first again?
Yeah, sure. My question is going to be the exact same as the last one. How do we define wokeism? And can we name like 3 woke policies that we think are destroying Western culture?
Well, you're a participant in this debate, so why don't you define them?
Well, the thing is, I can't because your guys' definitions for everything change at all points in time. That's always
This
the
topic,
issue. It's always the frustrating thing when it comes to
it's weird too.
wokeism. Yeah, sure.
Do you want to go first again?
So the question is, speaking of culture, has wokeism caused harm to the political climate?
Has wokeism caused harm to the political climate? Destiny is railroading it to policy, but political climate can be a really wide range. Political climate can be this very conversation. Like just political conversations between people that aren't even necessarily political pundits. Is that the word? Politicians. I wonder if it stays on that railroad.
Go first again?
Yeah, sure. My question is going to be the exact same as the last one. How do we define wokeism? And can we name like 3 woke policies that we think are destroying Western culture?
Well, you're a participant in this debate, so why don't you define them?
Well, the thing is, I can't because your guys' definitions for everything change at all points in time. That's always the issue. That's always the frustrating thing when it comes to fighting
Who's us guys?
conservatives.
I'm not a conservative.
I know you
so-
say you're not, but the conservative identification of wokeism and the idea that wokeism, whatever
Let's
that
forget about
boogeyman-
conservatism. Let's
Okay.
talk about wokeness. So
Okay.
what would be your definition of wokeness?
in the broadest sense, usually it's social issues that are very, very far left of the norm, I guess. But these positions in the United States, at least, tend to be held by...
Such as?
It might be certain things related to, I mean, trans people are obviously the hot go-to topic for everybody. It might be things specifically related to trans people. It might be things related to, they call it CRT, now they call it, or there was affirmative action, then CRT, then DEI. It might be people who are socialists, about the economy, or whatever that means to people. It really depends on where you're at, who would consider what woke, or what the conservative boogeyman of the day is.
I don't know what the conservative point of view. So your point of view is that wokeness is about trans people and DEI?
That seems to be the case when I look at
So
conservatives.
that's your definition.
I don't define things as a wokeism. It seems like a really vapid, stupid definition to me. I would just talk about the issue or the policy
I
itself.
guess your issue is with the topic of our debate then.
Well, no, because I think that you obsessively talk about wokeism, so it's probably a good thing for us to have a discussion
I'm asking
on.
you to define it so that instead of continuing...
Destiny's right. If one person doesn't really have a use for the word and doesn't really put an argument forward with that word, or they have no definition for the word to actually be able to put forward, it's on the other person to put forward the definition, especially if they're the one espousing that and talking about that and using that word with with a definition.
Only asking me questions and then pretending not to understand my answers, we actually address your argument. So
If you feel like there's an answer I don't understand, you can feel free to ask me to explain your answer. I can do it with ease. They're very simple. You only need the cognitive power of like a 9-year-old to understand them. So
your definition of wokeness is, again, just coming back to it. So we're clear about what we're discussing.
The median view on social beliefs, the things that are to the furthest left, or the most progressive, the most college student-y, young things, they tend to be around like gender things or minority issues or LGBTQI, whatever status. These tend to be like things that people identify as woke.
So what we're discussing in this section of the debate is whether far-left politics and progressivism has ruined society. Is that the discussion?
Yeah, sure.
What would you mean?
The question was on wokeism.
Right.
What?
The issue is...
And I got you to define...
What
it
was
as
that
far-left
interpretation?
progressivism.
Yes. Question
Has ruined society.
These tend to be like things that people identify as woke.
So what we're discussing in this section of the debate is whether far-left politics and progressivism has ruined society. Is that the discussion?
Yeah, sure.
Has ruined society. Society, that's not the conversation. ruin society and ruin the political environment or political climate are completely different things.
What would you mean?
It was the
Yeah,
question was
sure.
on wokeism.
Right.
The issue is
And I got you to define it as far left progressivism.
yes.
So
Insofar as I would define it, I don't see it as a major threat, at least to the United States, because I don't think that the people that tend to hold these views have any real political power. It tends to be college kids and people on Twitter. But conservatives are very concerned about this, and they talk about these issues all the time, and then they use them to power their policies that end up being even more regressive than the super woke stuff was progressive, because it wasn't really manifesting in a real way anyway. And now I have a country where half the states don't really have the ability to get an abortion for women because people thought that every 4-year-old was being forcibly transitioned to another gender. It's my issue with it.
well, that's your country and your issue. But just coming back to our definitions so that we can know what we're discussing. What you're addressing is, has far-left progressive politics had a negative impact on our society? That's how you understand this discussion, correct?
Am I going to say yes here, and you're going to go, I'm glad you agree that wokeism is far left?
No.
Yeah, I guess yes, that would be my understanding of this discussion,
Okay,
yes.
so
Yes.
good. Now we know what we're actually discussing. So in terms of its impact, I mean, one of the most obvious things, and I brought
What
up,
is your definition of wokeism?
I agree with you. I agree with your definition.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think it's okay to agree on a definition to have the discussion, right?
That's why I did it, so that we could agree on the definition.
Oh, okay. It felt a little bit more passive aggressive than that, but my bad.
Well,
I just
that's your
interpreted
bad.
it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I just, I've worked out the tricks that you play, and so I've trapped you in your own. Yeah. Could agree on the definition.
Oh, okay. It felt a little bit more passive aggressive than that, but my question, right?
I agree with your definition.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think it's okay to agree on a definition to have the discussion, right?
That's why I did it, so that we could agree on the definition.
Oh, okay. It felt a little bit more passive aggressive than that, but my bad.
Well,
I just
that's your
interpreted it
bad.
that
Yeah.
way. Okay, go for it.
I just, I've worked out the tricks that you play, and so I've trapped you in your own
No, he's right. This whole conversation has been completely passive aggressive.
logic.
And to be clear, the trick that I just played was asking you for the definition of a term.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right,
That's
my bad.
right.
I
That's
know that we
right.
don't like that here.
Exactly
okay, my
right.
bad. Okay, go
That's
ahead.
exactly right. Because what you do is you don't define it yourself, so that you can then argue with my definition for half an hour, and so we can't have the actual debate. Now be quiet, and I'm
I'll
going to
define my terms if you want. Well, I'm only going to be quiet.
Be quiet.
I'll define my terms if you want
Be
me to.
quiet.
But wokeism
Be
is a term you
quiet.
guys
It
use.
took me about 10 minutes to get you to define woke. I'm glad we did it. Now we can have
Now
the
you're going to
actual
use my
discussion.
definition. I'm glad I could
Now
provide
we
you
can
with
have
one.
the
Go
actual
for it.
discussion.
Okay.
Now we can have the actual discussion. So if your understanding of the question is, has far-left progressive politics made our societies worse? I completely agree with your definition, and I agree with the premise of the question that it has made things worse for a number of reasons. I mean, the trans thing became a big talking point because it's so ridiculous, not because it's so hugely actually impactful on society, although I do think a small number of children being given puberty blockers and an even smaller number of children being given gender transition surgery is a terrible thing that's happened. I think more broadly, though, I mean, one of the most obvious examples is we now have a society which has, I mean, it's not codified and it's not expressed in, in the, like, no one says publicly we now discriminate against these groups of people, unless occasionally they do. So, for example, the Royal Air Force in this country, when they were in a recruiting drive, they were really struggling to get pilots. And there was a woman there who got fired from the Royal Air Force because she refused to go along with the policy. Her supervisor said to her, "We're not hiring any more useless straight white men." She said, "I don't agree with this policy, it's discriminatory," and she was fired. We've had a system of anti-male, anti-white.
Can I just ask a quick question? on that? So
no,
if I were to
no,
look
I'm not
that up,
finished
the
yet.
Royal Air
I'm
Force
not
had a
finished
policy
yet.
of not
I'm
hiring
not,
straight white
I'm
men.
not finished
Is
yet.
that true?
I'm not finished yet.
Okay. I have a feeling it's not, but okay.
So this is something you can look up. It was covered extensively in the news in this country. Probably wasn't covered that well on Wikipedia where you did the research, but
No, but on The Sun and all of your
but
favorite
it was-
publications, I'm
was-
sure they talked about it a lot.
no, actually, it was covered extensively across the
and
mainstream
that what they
media.
covered was that the Royal Air Force
Can
was
I
not
finish?
hiring.
You can watch Destiny do all of his research live. He actually goes and looks at articles and all the different sources that you can. Not just Wikipedia. And by the way, Wikipedia is not a bad source. It's a bad source if you use it as the source itself, but you can definitely click through the footnotes. They link their claims the proof to their claims. It's crazy.
Bring
my
straight
point,
white men. Well,
Stephen,
you seem to
Stephen,
respond to some things, but
just
not others.
well,
so that wasn't the policy. I can tell because you're not answering
that.
but
That
that's okay.
was the policy that was pursued by the Royal Air Force. It was revealed by this whistleblower who was fired for revealing it. The BBC in this country has internships that are not available to white people. We effectively have created a system of...
I forget if he does it in the debate or actually does it in this, or does it later when he's reviewing. But this is, if you look into it, it's not a policy. It's a dumb email from someone that's in a hiring position.
Passive, tacit, sometimes open discrimination against different groups of people. And one of the reasons that the sort of reactionary sentiment, which you try and paint me as representing, which I don't, is rising in this country and rising quite quickly, including ethno-nationalist sentiment, is because of this. And the reason I opposed wokeness from the very beginning and far-left progressivism from the very beginning was that it was obvious to me that the number one consequence of pursuing radical left-wing progressivism and racial essentialism of this kind would be that the majority population would begin to pursue identity politics for itself. If you discriminate against white men and say so openly, it's going to be a very short period of time before white men look at that and say, well, if we're now picking people for jobs based on skin color, I am the oppressed minority now, or I'm the oppressed majority now. We need to look after my interests. And the reason you see the reactionary forces rising, both in America, in the rest of Europe, and in this country, is precisely because they've been pushed into this corner by woke leftists. And that is one of the major ways that this movement has damaged our society, as I predicted all along.
You put it as societal damage, it's not political climate.
I would say the least impressive thing about conservative predictions is that typically what they'll do is they will build their own enemies, they will cry about the enemies, and then when they manage to convince everybody else that those enemies are real, and then those people react against those enemies, they try to say that, well, it was the enemies in the beginning that caused this particular problem to come about. And I guess the issue that I have is, when it comes to woke-related stuff, it's hard to find ever, like, what are the particular DEI policies or affirmative action policies that we're talking about. It's always some vague allusion to airlines don't want to hire white pilots, or they lower their standards for black pilots, or these things that tend to not exist when you actually dig into them. Now, I don't know, maybe it is the case that the Royal Air Force actually had a policy of not hiring straight white men. It did, yeah. Okay, I'll look into that. I'm curious about that. I have a feeling when I look into it, it's going to be completely untrue, like most of the stuff that you bring it up. But I'll look into it. Maybe it was true. And, if it is, I would say that's not a good thing, that you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. Okay. But I guess the issue I have is, when we talk about magnitude, I think you said earlier that sometimes people fixate on these issues a little bit too much, but it's because they're such common sense issues. When I look at the United States right now and I think how many trans people are there, how many people are doing stuff related to trans people, the number of people is incredibly small. It's like 1%. And the idea that that would somehow cause so much of a population to become reactionary that, as of 30 minutes ago, I'm pretty sure Iran has tried to bomb like 7 different countries because we have a president who is a madman who is going on a rampage against the entire world insofar as trade and bombs goes. I just can't, in my mind, rationalize how so many of these smart people I'll say in the center like you who say, well, I can obviously identify that this is a problem. Why don't you ever identify any of these super obvious problems on the right, or any of the super obvious problems that are reactionary to the other things that were reactionary, especially when the issues in the United States on the right are represented through every single pylon of power that the conservatives have, and on the left they're in colleges and on Twitter and Facebook and sometimes in AI world on Sora.
This is an article from Sky News. Could you just read out what it says, please?
So I see the AI summary here is applicants.
Read out the headline.
Well, I don't know if this is a headline or if this is a.
Read out the headline. That is so dumb. I mean, even the reading the AI summary would have been dumb. But read the headline. This is my proof that I'm using. Read the headline.
Read out the
what are we
headline.
proving again?
Applicants seeking to join RAF described as useless white male pilots in bid to hit impossible diversity. Applicants.
Read out the head. What it says, please.
So I see the AI summary here is
Read
applicants.
out the headline.
It's that
Well, I don't know if this is a headline or if this is a.
Read out the headline.
Okay, so it says applicants seeking to join RAF described as useless white male pilots in bid to hit impossible diversity targets.
oh, we backed up to that.
Seeking to join RAF described. Well, I don't know if this is a headline or if this is a.
Read out the headline.
Okay, so it says applicants seeking to join RAF described as useless white male pilots in bid to hit impossible diversity targets. Just to be clear, just so I can understand.
Thank you.
Is this headline the same as no straight white men were hired? Or they had a policy of not hiring straight white men? Wait, I'm just so curious. Do you understand the difference between somebody not being hired because they're white? Because I'm not going to sit. If you're going to ask me, like, do you think there were ever racist people or even against white people? Of course there are. But you understand there's a difference between the entire Air Force having a policy of not hiring straight white men versus, I guess there was an email where some straight white candidates were skipped over. I don't even know if it was because they didn't meet qualifications or not. They used white men to describe them, but they also called them useless. I don't know if it was because they were white or not. You know there's a difference between those two things, right?
So you don't know this story?
Do you know there's a difference between those two things or no?
Yes, I do. Now
Okay,
be
thank you.
quiet.
Okay,
Now-
gotcha. Because I was asking for evidence of mine, but you gave me that. So like I said initially, I had a feeling if I looked this up, it wasn't going to be
you ever gonna
what
let
you
me
presented
talk?
it as. Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay. So you just denied the existence of this and you questioned it.
I did not deny the
Stop
existence
talking.
of that, but go
Stop
ahead.
talking.
You seem to have
Stop
a lot
talking.
of trouble following what I'm saying.
Stop
but that's
talking.
Okay. Okay.
Ju- Look, the only way to
He didn't deny the existence of it. He said he was going to look into it and it was going to be something else. When did DST appear? What is DST? What year is it? Wait, is DST Destiny? Is that a way to type? Wait, what? What year is it? Daylight Savings Time. Oh, did we switch? Are we done with the bullshit? Let's go. Is that why you're asking what year it is, Third? I wonder if that's why we crashed. Went ahead at 2 a.m. Huh. Congrats, we're done. We're done with the bullshit. It's over. Congrats, everyone.
have
More
a
sunlight.
conversation is when people talk in turns.
No, it's not. The only way to have a conversation is when two people are making a good faith effort to understand each other. My question was,
Right.
did the RAF have a policy of not
We're in the
hiring
future.
straight white
Yay.
men?
Yes.
You showed me an email that said there were
But they
applicants
had
that
that
were
policy.
rejected that were called useless
Someone go
white
get the
male
winning
pilots or
lottery
whatever.
numbers.
They rejected applicants in a bid to hit diversity targets, which means they discriminated against white men in favor of other groups.
Yes, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that in this particular email, but that doesn't mean that they were not hiring any straight white men
I
for
didn't
some...
say they were not hiring any straight white men. I said they were discriminating against them in favor of other people to hit diversity targets, which were described by the people who were charged with recruiting them as impossible to hit. In other words, they were deliberately undermining both the efficacy and the fair treatment of people in their hiring policies because of DEI.
Okay, so this...
you get it now?
The position of now, yes. And that
Okay,
sounds more
good.
realistic, that there might have been a hiring... Okay.
In other words, they were deliberately undermining both the efficacy and the fair treatment of people in their hiring policies because of DEI.
Okay, so...
Treatment, in other words, the people not hiring.
Now, but that doesn't mean that they were not hiring any straight white men
I
for
didn't
some...
say they were not hiring any straight white men. I said they were discriminating against them in favor of other people to hit diversity targets, which were described by the people who were charged with recruiting them as impossible to hit. In other words, they were deliberately...
This is not the argument he put forward. He said there was policy.
deliberately undermining both the efficacy and the fair treatment of people.
He has to fill out
in
all
their
the shit in
hiring
between
policies
now because his,
of DEI.
the way he
Okay,
blew up
so
his
this
claim
is
got
what it
called
is?
out.
Yeah, the position of now, yes. And that
Okay,
sounds more
good.
realistic, that there might have been a hiring policy that favored some groups of people that weren't white over the
Right.
white ones
Right.
to cause them to get hired when it might have been in a blind trial, the white people would have been hired otherwise. Yes.
Right.
Do you understand that that's significantly different than you saying the RAF had a policy of not hiring
Again, this still isn't going back to the topic, the political climate. This is a damage on like what airline hirings. This isn't a damage on the political climate.
Straight white pilots. First of all, I don't know what straight had to do with. Are you bi? Do you get like a special application on the?
Well, I'm sure you'd want to know the answer to that question, but
Well, I wouldn't because I would never become British. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But
So I think I've just look. This is why I brought it up, because the idea of a conversation is good faith.
He's
but
like,
if you question
am I
anything that
crazy? It feels like he's slurring in this conversation. Right, like that's not even, like, am I racist and that's Britishism or what? Like,
are you bi? Do you get like a special application on the?
Well, I'm sure you'd want to know the answer to that question, but
Well, I wouldn't because I would never become British. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But
So I think I've just look. This is why I brought it up, because the idea
This is
of a
why I brought
conversation
it
is
up.
good faith. But if you question anything
I
that I
tell
bring
you
up
what.
that you don't know anything about,
Someone
and then
took on
say,
our eight
well,
as a
I
right.
don't believe that this happened, and I present you evidence that it did happen, and then you still continue to deny it, I don't see how we can have an actual debate. Now, I never said the RAF hires 0 white pilots. What I said is the policy of discriminating against white men.
Now he's blowing up Destiny's claim that he said they hired 0 white pilots. Or that he said.
Which has been rife in the rest of society, has created the situation where a lot of people rightly, understandably at least, feel antagonistic about it. That was one of the biggest threats with wokeness, and that is one of the biggest challenges where we are. All your points about Trump and all the rest of it, I don't see how it's relevant, and I think we're going to have a section on Trump coming up. I made the point, I think, about trans, that I think trans, I mean, the insanity of some of the things we've been asked to believe, which is like, you know, if you say you're a woman, you automatically...
It's a skill to answer the question you want and not the one that's what's given. I mean, I gotta take points from Destiny, too. He kind of failed the topic. He was given the steering wheel for the definition of wokeism, even though he didn't want it, which is cool and good, but nobody defined the rest. Constantine reinterpreted the topic from wokeism's affecting the political environment or the political climate, and he swapped out political climate with just like effects on the world, just effects in general, pretty much. He's saying like detriment to society. They're different claims. And Destiny's just letting him go with it. What your definition? Jesus Christ. What if they just made out and agreed to disagree? You know, they should have. But I don't think Constantine does that on camera, because Destiny just made the bi implication. How did that go? I want to see that again.
That was one of the biggest threats with wokeness, and that is one of the biggest, at least for the debate. You have the idea.
I would never become British. First of all, I don't different than you saying the RAF had a policy of not hiring straight white pilots. First of all, I don't know what straight had to do with. Are you bi? Do you get like a special application on the?
Well, I'm sure you'd want to know the answer to that question, but
Well, I wouldn't because
It's even what I thought it was. Destiny just asked a good question, like, or how would they even know? And this dude's like, I'm sure you'd like to know, you bi person.
I would never become British.
You know he
Jesus
wants to
Christ.
say that slur. You know he wants to call him. I don't even want to say it, and I can't.
I think I've just look. This is why I brought it up, because the idea of a conversation is good faith. But if you
and they made out
anything
right
that
in
I
the
bring
church
up
in front of the
that
cross.
you don't know anything about, and then say, "Well, I don't believe that this happened."
My
and I present you
Lord.
evidence that it did happen, and then you still continue to deny it. I don't see how we can have an actual debate. Now, I never said the RAF hires 0 white pilots. What I said is the policy of discriminating against white men, which has been rife in the rest of society, has created the situation where a lot of people rightly, understandably at least, feel antagonistic about it. That was one of the biggest threats with wokeness, and that is one of the biggest challenges where we are. All your points about Trump and all the rest of it, I don't see how it's relevant, and I think we're going to have a section on Trump coming up. I made the point, I think, about trans, that I think trans, I mean, the insanity of some of the things we've been asked to believe, which is like, you know, if you say you're a woman, you automatically become a woman. I think people rightly balk against that because it's ridiculous. Doesn't mean it's the #1 issue. I've never said it's the #1 issue. In fact, I pointed out it's
Minecraft
quite a
yourself,
minor issue
G.
in terms of the number of people affected by it. But
I'm just curious, in terms of your shows, of all the social issues you talk about, do you think that the trans stuff is at the top 3?
Fuck honkies, we don't need to be in the air.
well, I don't think we've talked about trans for like a year and a half, maybe 1 or 2 episodes in a year and a half.
Okay,
2
do you feel
years.
like for conservatives in general in the United States, do you think that trans is one of the top issues that they talk about? On all the reform stuff that I looked at, trans was listed on a ton of it. It was in the manifesto.
I'm not a Republican conservative in America, so I don't know what they talk about. It's up to them.
Well, who would you have voted for in the last American election?
Who would I have voted for? Donald Trump, for sure.
Okay, so I don't know. Okay.
Doesn't mean that you're a conservative Republican.
Of course it does. Definitionally so. You're voting for the conservative Republican candidate.
So if you present me with a small pile of shit and a big pile of shit, and I pick the small pile of shit, you
It's
go,
totally the biggest issue.
you have shit. No.
If the
I'm so debate-brained that I kind of just, like, I start checking out when the topic isn't being met. Because that, to me, is a failure of, like, the conversation to even be happening. I feel like I'm watching nothing be talked about. You know what I mean? Like,
vote is between a guy who resembles the furthest right you can be insofar
if this
as
actually
conceptualized
happened in a high
And a
school
guy who
debate
has no
round,
brain.
the round would be like a pile of shit. For high schoolers. People who have no business knowing how to debate or anything about politics. Damn shit keeps falling down. One sec. The blue light filter hit. Shit. Morning cactus? Yeah, morning cactus. Actually, no, because daylight. Those, my light timer doesn't adjust for daylight. You can't watch people debate anymore. It went from everyone calling him a god king to everyone now distancing themselves. I mean, I voted for him, but it was between him or a woman, so you know. Daylight cactus. Daylight cactus. Yeah, my cactus isn't awake yet. You voted for Trump third? That's wild. I find that hard to believe. But you said it was that or a woman, so I guess.
brain, yeah, I'll go with the guy with the brain.
So
yeah.
Kamala Harris, the
Cactus
person
controls
who
the
was a
weather.
DA in
True.
California,
Yeah.
who was Attorney
Yeah.
General in
Yeah.
California,
Yeah.
who served as Vice President, who was a senator in California, versus Donald Trump, who brags about taking and passing 3 cognitive tests in a month.
Yeah.
The dumb person is Kamala Harris there.
Look, I just explained to you that when you make choices between things, it's not because you necessarily love the choice you're making. If you're forced to choose between 2 things, you choose the one that is the lesser evil, effectively.
Sure, I'm just curious. Over the past,
I agree with a lot of Donald Trump's foreign policy.
Sure,
which
of
is
course
one
you do. I
those-
know you do. 'Cause
Look, I
you're
called it.
conservative
What'd you
foreign
call?
policy. Over the past 5 years, so you do this thing where you're like, well, I have to choose between 2 things. When you've had this same
That's
choice,
what an election is. It's a choice between 2 things.
well, not in the UK. You can vote between a lot of things. We have 2 parties in the
Yes,
US, but
but
that's okay.
in-
I can always educate you in your political system. It's fine. But so my question is, of all these things that you have to choose between, at what case in the last 5 years have you leaned to the left on and would vote for the left on versus the right? Has it
I
ever-
voted for the left. I voted for a Liberal Democrat at the last election, and it's likely that I will again at the next one. I just told you this.
what about in terms of supporting major issues? How many lib left candidates, I guess, do you guys have on your show, or do you talk to or support?
As many as will come on.
Does that mean 0? Or
Chose him because the other
Okay,
choice
'cause
was
I know,
Kamala. She wasn't gonna be that
Barack's been on
bad.
a ton. I know you've done a lot of content with Goodwin.
Okay, they're not far left, right? But we've
correct.
also
They're right, yeah.
We've also
My
had
point,
the
yeah.
co-founder of Extinction Rebellion, who's currently in prison for blocking roads, on the show. We've had
I voted
Aaron
for her.
Bastani,
Oh,
who's the
okay.
co-founder of Novara Media, a far-left news organization in this country. We've had a bunch.
Wait,
of,
I don't know what your
mean,
initial
I
message
could go
was
down the
then.
list for ages if you want, if that's what you
I mean,
like.
I've seen
I'm
the
getting
top 10 lists
tired.
of the people that you've invited the most.
The
on
blue
were
light
generally
filter's here.
We
right-leaning
had
people,
comedian
yeah.
Mark Steele, who's a lefty. We had Deborah Francis White from the
Sure.
Guilty
I'm
Feminist
guessing when you say
podcast.
lefty for these people, they're populist lefties that think that the whole institution is rotted and they
No.
don't support
No.
actively.
No,
so
not
the
at all.
guy that you just described, is he a Labor voter? Would he support Labor? Has he supported Labor?
Which guy? Mark
the
Steele.
one-
He's
yeah.
a lifelong Labour voter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then you get credit for that one, I guess. Okay. I haven't seen every episode of Trigonometry. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, maybe you should stop opining about who we have on then if you haven't seen every episode of Trigonometry.
I don't think I should have to watch every single episode of Trigonometry to have a
You
rough idea.
you
of-
should know who we have on the show regularly before you make a
I
judgment.
have a
on it,
decent
yeah.
idea.
No, you
I-
don't. You've just demonstrated
I
that you
haven't
don't.
seen. I haven't seen you. I demonstrate. I don't know every single person that goes on.
Right.
You haven't made
Would
a
you like
Twitter
me to give
video
you more
saying,
lefties?
"Okay, well, call me left wing now." You did make one saying, "Well, fine, I'll be
Well,
right
because
wing
how
now."
can you
Like,
vote for one?
Clearly, you lean
They
in this
usually-
direction.
there's
No,
usually
people
more
perceive you- why do you think
grounded
people
reasons than
perceive
that,
you
but
right-wing then?
simultaneously-
You're so centrist, or you
Why
lean
does
left
the
or right?
BBC
I have
become
heard that
right-wing?
polling is
Everybody,
that
on my side at least,
people
everybody perceives
don't
you
want to
as
vote for a
right-wing.
woman
Because
just
it's
because they're a
convenient for
woman.
you, as you've
Like
demonstrated in the course of
and
this
that's so
conversation.
fucking
What way?
sad.
I'm about to explain if you just
Okay.
stop talking.
I hope you actually explain.
I will.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay. Can you be quiet while I do?
My mic is down.
Okay, good.
Stop filibustering.
So it's convenient to you in exactly the way that you've demonstrated throughout this conversation, where when I make a good point about anything, you say, you conservatives, and then you pivot to talking about Republicans in America, because it suits you, because then you can argue against things you came here prepared to argue against, instead of arguing with what I'm actually saying.
It's dumb to
Doesn't
talk
feel
about
like I
even
haven't- First of all, I'm pretty sure the debate topics were related to America.
because
Um,
nobody's
number one.
pulling all that out right now. They're not
Number one,
pulling
that's
all that
okay.
out right now.
Number
All the
two,
people
what
that
is a
he's
question
had
that
on
you
the
feel like
show.
You've said that I accused you of being a conservative and then I pivoted and I didn't respond to your point.
Every single thing we've discussed.
Name one of them then.
Every single thing we've
So
discussed.
you can't think of a single one. What did I not respond to for immigration? You didn't bring up a
national-
point. You said a bunch of descriptions. You're like, well, this is true, and then that was
You
it.
keep talking over me, which means we're not actually having a discussion.
Because I'm asking you for an example, and,
And
you're trying to
giving you
filibuster.
one. I'm about to give you one if you just
Okay,
stop interrupting.
one point that I didn't respond
Can
to.
you just stop interrupting?
Go ahead, give me the point.
Can you just stop interrupting?
I'm not even
Just-
interrupting. I'm waiting for you to
not
finish.
interrupting means when I say something, you don't talk after that. Can you do
Ever?
that now?
Okay. Can I fuck up? Okay, go
There
ahead.
you go. On every single thing that we've discussed, immigration, national identity.
Just one thing. You're not having you're not having a conversation. I guess I didn't expect you to check out this early, but I'm asking, is there a single point that you feel like I haven't responded to with substance, and you're saying everything because you realize you don't have
if
an
you want
answer
to have
for
this
that?
conversance by yourself, you're welcome to. But
I feel like I am.
you
All
are-
he has to
I know
do
I
is
am.
give the
No,
thing.
I am. I feel that way. Yeah.
All he has to do is give the single thing. All he has to do, but instead he's making it this whole thing, this whole bit, because he needs to eke out a single, semblance of a win.
Yes.
It's so
Yeah. I'm
fucking
Speaking to the
annoying.
Because
copy-pasted
you're-
talking points,
you're
and I
not-
can't get an actual answer out of you for anything.
And then you just go
I can give
silent.
you better answers if you're looking for them. Yeah. It's crazy to me that you guys cry about wokeism and snowflakes and all this stuff so much, but like, you guys do it all the time. You made the claim that I'm avoiding answering any of your arguments because I'm calling you a conservative. I think you are a conservative and I labels you as such, but I'm not dodging your arguments. There's not a point you brought up that I refuse to address. That's why I asked you for an example of one, and you weren't able to give one. And that's fine if you're not able to give one, but then don't continue to filibuster and make the claim. Just say, okay, well, I guess maybe that was an unfair thing I said, and here's a point that I'm going to make that I would like you to address. That would be the time where you would say, here's a thing that I brought up. You pivoted and you didn't address that particular thing. That would be a thing you could do if I was actually dodging and pivoting from all your points.
I can't hear any of you. You're going to have to shout louder. Russian agent. What does that mean? So you're saying that because I'm from Russia and I have opinions you don't like, I'm a Russian agent?
Why are we debating the crowd right now? I'm still here.
Is that what
can
you're
you
saying?
not have a? Can you really not answer my questions
I'm
that
just
much?
not very clear. Is that what you're saying?
Let's not yell out questions from the audience. Let's not get into that. Let's try to let the
And proof that we are moderating, by the way.
On track here.
All the times Constantine tries to call out shit like you're rambling over, or you're talking over me. It's all just a bunch of you're talking over me's. Not one of them has moderator felt like Destiny was talking over him enough to step in. And moderator will step in to control the conversation in the debate, even if the topics are kind of shit.
Simple question. What do you feel like I haven't addressed?
Every single thing that we've discussed.
Okay, let's run it down. So you said I
Immigration.
didn't address immigration, right? My point on immigration is that you guys have fear-mongered about immigration, and every single policy that you've tried to enact has
Every
failed.
time you say you guys, you've already lost the argument because you're not arguing with me.
Okay, well, I asked you for a clear stance on whether or not you thought
I was
Brexit
very
was
clear
good
on
on net. You literally said you would not answer the Brexit question. When I asked if you were God, you could push a button. You literally said, well, I don't know why I couldn't do that.
It's immigration. Immigration,
No,
not Brexit, immigration.
Sure, well, Brexit was a part of the immigration argument, right?
Not for me.
For the majority of the... Oh, my God. I'm sorry. It's okay. What question did you even pose to me with regards to immigration that you felt like I didn't answer? I don't think you even posed a question to me.
What you failed to do, we started this bit of the just listen, okay? Just put the microphone down and listen.
I'm listening.
Put the microphone down for a moment and listen.
I'm going to hold it right here.
All he has to do is describe a point or a thing that was unanswered. It's very simple. He's going to monologue instead.
Now you carry on. I'm not going to talk if you keep interrupting me. I'm not interested in
I'm
this.
not interrupting
Whatever
you.
this is. You are.
I'm literally not. I'm asking you a question. You just refuse to answer. This is the game. How did I do it again? I'm asking you a clear question. You can't give me an answer.
I'm not going to talk to you unless you listen to what I'm saying as well as me listening to what you're saying.
I am listening.
Okay, good. So we started this bit of the conversation, right? Talking about the exchange that we just had. That's what we were talking about, right? And you made your points, and I tried to make my points, and you keep interrupting and talking over me, right? I've addressed immigration, and I've addressed every single other thing that you brought up. And the moment I do, what you do is you say, well, you conservatives say this, you conservatives say that, in order that you can then argue with things that I haven't said. And that is exactly what you've done throughout this whole thing. So when you ask me, why do people say that you're a conservative? It's because it's much more convenient for them than addressing the arguments that I'm actually making. And you've demonstrated that throughout this entire discussion. That answers your question.
Okay, what is the argument that you're making with specificity to immigration? What does Constantine's ideal immigration policy for Great Britain look like? And who in the past have you supported their vision for immigration to the United Kingdom?
Sorry, because I jumped in, which I shouldn't have done.
Second part.
Me, okay. Second part.
Yeah. No, who have you supported historically over the past 10 years? Whose idea for immigration, I guess, have you supported policy-wise, politician-wise? Who would you support right now? What is your ideal vision for immigration to the United Kingdom?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So my ideal vision for immigration in this country would be something like probably 40 to 50,000 people a year, highly selective, which means that you really have to qualify in terms of your skill set, ticking all sorts of other cultural compatibility, age, and so all sorts of other things that basically mean you're likely to be a very positive net contribution to the country. You're probably going to have the ability to earn and pay more tax than you receive in benefits over your lifetime. You're unlikely to commit crime. You're unlikely to become a terrorist. You're unlikely to do things that we wouldn't want you to do. It would be highly selective. I think I would definitely prioritize immigration from people, from countries, not from countries really, but from people who already speak the language, who maybe have a cultural familiarity.
We left the last topic in the past, by the way. We've jumped back.
So Hong Kongers are a good example of this, right? These are people who are formerly part of the British Empire, speak the language, they're able to come over, integrate very easily, and make a good contribution. So something like 40 to 50,000 people a year. But again, you know, it's a democratic thing. So if the British people vote to have zero immigration, that's their right. If the British people want to have 300,000 people come a year, that's their right. The part of the
Who
problem
fucking
we have
cares?
with immigration in this country.
What are we talking about now? We're monologuing now.
Wait, can I ask just real
No,
quick?
no,
before you
just
go
let
on
me
the
just
point?
finish this bit, and then you can ask whatever you want. A part of the problem we've had with immigration in the last 30 years is, despite the fact that people keep voting against mass immigration of the kind that we've had, they keep voting for parties that promise to reduce it in 2010, in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, in 2019, and in 2024. In all of those elections, immigration was a major issue, and the British people overwhelmingly voted against what we have today. Despite that fact, we've actually had the opposite of what they voted for. So I want managed, highly selective, low numbers, high compatibility, and I want it to be in line with the democratic wishes of the British people.
Okay, so then a statement and then a question. So I would argue that the reason why people have voted for lower immigration and they haven't gotten the lower immigration is because I don't think people tend to vote for higher or lower immigration. I think that people vote for where they feel problems are, and I feel like people sometimes scapegoat immigrants as a class of people for why these problems exist. So if housing is high, you vote for less immigrants, or if the job market is bad, you vote for less immigrants, or if the NHS wait times are too high, you vote for less immigrants, or if Brexit is losing too much sovereignty, whatever, you vote for less immigrants. I feel like when it comes to these issues, the immigrants become this catch-all scapegoat, which I'm not even saying, and again, you know, you can label me however you want, but like I'm not a woke person when it comes to immigration. I don't think there's anything wrong with being selective against certain groups of people, but I think that the reason why there's such this pressure for the government, the majority government, to have more immigrants come in is because they know that as much as people might feel a certain type of way about certain types of immigrants, that the collapse of the NHS or the collapse of the education system or the collapse of the local economy is going to be worse than allowing more people to come in and work those jobs. So I guess my question is, and I'm pushing with a degree of specificity because you speak about these issues a lot, when you say selecting for certain values, like what is it? What would that test even look like when you say selecting for certain values? What are the values that you're selecting for? Number one, and then number two, you mentioned like they have to speak the language and it should be like highly skilled people that can contribute net tax positives to the economy. Let's assume that you met the threshold for all of these things. Why cap it at 30 or 40,000 if they can integrate perfectly? If they speak the language, why not have like 100 or 200 or 300,000 of these people coming in?
It's a very good question. For me, I am less attached to the numbers. I just think where culturally Britain is at the moment is that's what the British people would want. For me, it's the numbers are. You know, Joseph Stalin said quantity has a quality all of its own, and I think there's a truth to that, which is once you have very large numbers of people coming over a short period of time, it is disruptive for the reasons we've already discussed, and it also can put pressure on infrastructure. The reason, by the way, we haven't had the policy on mass immigration that the British people voted for isn't that. I mean, I agree with you. Of course, there are some people who scapegoat immigrants to explain the problems that society has, and I don't agree with scapegoating immigrants. That doesn't mean mass immigration is necessarily good. One of the problems with mass immigration is it's effectively been used in Europe to cover up the fact that our economies are not growing. Our economies are shrinking on a per capita basis. We are poorer per capita in this country today than we were before the financial crisis. And the reason we haven't had the policy of controlled immigration that people keep voting for is that bringing in more bodies is the only way politicians can pretend our economy is still growing. That's actually the main reason that this has been happening.
Okay, so again, so I guess my question is, what are the values, or what are the things that you would select for when you talk about like a values-based test for people coming to the country? Like, what are the things that you're talking about? And then also just a comment on, the reason why we're bringing in immigrants is to shore up an economy. I think a lot of that has to do with the boomer generation as well, that you had a lot of people come back from wars, or stay for wars, I guess for your guys' case, but in the United States we say come back. And then you had this aging population that had a ton of kids, and now these people have all hit a certain age, so you're kind of at this weird demographic age thing, which is why they're bringing in a bunch of younger workers now to kind of fix that issue, because you've got a lot of benefits and your triple lock pension, whatever else, all these things, Social Security in the United States. Yeah.
Well, that's part of it, but the problem is if you're bringing people who are net consumers of tax revenue, then you're not solving that problem, you're making it worse, right? And that's what's been happening in the UK. So when you have
It feels like we're just generally
unskilled or
arguing
very
immigration
low-skilled
all of a sudden.
and plus lots of dependents, you're actually bringing in people who are then going on benefits in this country, which I have no idea why it is in this country that we allow foreign citizens to receive benefits. It doesn't make any sense to me. But what happens is you then effectively are bringing net consumers of tax revenues, and you're making that problem worse, which is why I...
From a judge perspective, like a debate judge perspective, this is showing like a super failure on Constantine's part. He couldn't use any of the 30-minute conversation around immigration when it was the topic to actually bring anything like this to the table, or actually lay out any of this. And now he's only doing it as a, let's see, what the argument chain was, the topic, which was wokeism's effect on the political climate. I'm going to write this down. Wokeism's effect on the political climate. Turned into wokeism's effects. Turned into stop interrupting me. Turned into you haven't answered any of my points. Turned back into the immigration topic. We took 5 fucking twists, turns, and bends. And also, we're talking about immigration's effects. Specifically. Not even what the original immigration topic was, which was erasure of national like a national cultural or a national identity. This is dodging in its purest form. This is fucking ridiculous.
I say it isn't that. It's the fact that politicians are able to pretend that we are growing. I mean, the British economy is growing by like 1.1% or whatever it is. It's still not even growing even on that basis. But the reason they bring in lots and lots of people is so that they can add to the total tax base without having consideration of what happens when you divide that by the number of people, which is you're getting poorer.
Okay, so then let's say that everything you just say is true. And I would agree that bringing in people to consume welfare, now I can't speak to the exact immigration schema that you have in the United Kingdom, but let's assume that that is happening, then why not speak to changing those policies, rather than attacking the concept of like, well, 200,000 people came in and they're all leeching from the welfare. Why not just say that, if people want to try to immigrate, we'll do this. However,
Why doesn't
we're gonna
Minecraft
forbid
have smooth
people
stone
from
stairs?
qualifying for this much welfare. In the United States, you have
She's
to make a certain
andesite,
amount of money to
right?
qualify for visas or, long permanent resident cards, green cards, or whatever. Why don't I ever hear a conversation about that, changing the incentives?
Well, that's exactly what I advocate for all the time. That's literally what I say every time I talk about immigration.
Okay, that's good, but because I feel like I just heard you talk a lot about it, and it was just reducing the number, high skilled only, reducing the number.
It's a little too
but
late for that.
having, like,
Oh
a
no.
cap
The
on-
thing you just described is literally what I advocate for on a daily basis.
Okay, I hear you talk a lot about the other stuff, but maybe I've just happened to miss those things.
The thing that what I believe about immigration, one of the problems is because, for the reasons we've already discussed, when you've had this open border policy combined with, the mantra diversity is our greatest strength, you build up a lot of resentment with other people against immigrants. And the reason people...
You playing
see people
Minecraft right now,
on the
Tim?
internet talking about, Britain's been colonized and Britain's been invaded. I don't like that language. I understand why people use it, but I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is I don't blame people for wanting to come to Britain. Britain's great. Of course they'd want to come here. I believe that what we need to do is change policy so that the British government is doing things that are in the interest of the British people. And it's not in the interest of the British people for us to be spending £14 million a day on illegal immigrants. It's not in the interest of British people to be housing, clothing, and feeding
Fixing up a
people
shop I share
who've
with
come here from
XBY on
other
a server?
countries
Hell
who
yeah.
are not British citizens and who are not paying tax here. We shouldn't have foreign nationals in social housing. We should not be providing benefits.
I don't know if
to
I
foreign
explained what I'm
nationals.
doing in
And I say this as
Minecraft
someone
right
who was
now.
very poor
We're
and a
AFK
foreign
at my
national for quite
magma
a
slime
significant
farm.
portion of my life in this country.
So that I can get more magma cream, so that I can get more magma blocks, so that I can make a gold farm. That's why I got this shulker box in my inventory. It has everything else I need. I haven't ever made a job of gold farm before. I'm used to portal ticking with Bedrock.
I advocate for sensible policies on immigration, on what happens when you get here. That is my position, which is why, with all respect, I'm glad a normal conversation has broken out between us, despite the conversation we were having earlier, because this is the reason I don't subscribe to political parties and this sort of team-based agenda, because every political party has lots of things about its policies that I don't like. I don't like lots of things about left and right political parties. I like to advocate for the things that I believe are positive for this country. I think a positive, carefully selected immigration policy, and then putting the interests of British people who are already here, who are nationals of this country first, is exactly what we should be doing. So
Sure.
I'm glad we agree on that.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with anything you've said, but one of the issues with the statement of, like, I don't subscribe to a certain political party, I think that you can have a constellation of ideas that don't map cleanly onto some side, but when it comes down to elections, or when it comes down to pushing people to vote in an election, you kind of have to choose a party, or you have to choose a person. Things have to collapse into one choice.
Sure.
And I guess... you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the feeling that I get from you, from the things that I've heard you say, is that if I were to look at the past 20 years of British politics, and if immigration was a huge issue that I had with this country, I feel like the Conservatives have failed monumentally.
Destiny could elaborate on this more. I think he makes a good point. You can have a constellation of ideas that doesn't map cleanly onto any given specific political ideology. But the problem with that is you never get to enact your constellation ideas as is. You don't get to have your own perfect constellation of ideas. Because that constellation gets collapsed down into choices that you don't necessarily even agree with. But nonetheless, they're an effect of the collapsing of your constellation. Like, you design your constellation, you design how it collapses. You design where the weights are and what your cutoffs are and what your like red lines and all that shit are. Even if interpersonally or in your perfect world where you can choose every single thing looks one way, your actions are much more representative of your political ideology. Because they're the things that actually are conducive of results.
in
Absolutely.
dealing with the immigration
And this guy already said that he would have voted for Trump. So
issue.
Of course.
I feel like
Just like Labour before them. Yeah.
Sure, but I feel like the prediction was that Labor was going to continue to fail massively on it, and it seems like Labor hasn't failed. It seems like Starmer, for all of his faults, I know you guys all hate him, but it seems like his government has done a good job at cutting heavily into the amount of immigrants coming over, cutting heavily through the backlog of asylum seekers that you had that the Tories refused to deal with. But now, on the eve of all these Tories beginning to look like they're going to flip to reform, I feel like all of the people who are opposed to the mass migration or mass immigration narrative are going to try to support reform when all of these people have seemed to fail to deliver on these reduction of immigration promises over and over and over again, and that's just very confusing to me. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, let me explain it to you. I mean, it's a fair critique. So, first of all, the Labour, your point about, Labour Party is reduce the numbers, it's not quite how it works, but yeah, the numbers are lower. They're still very high. I mean, this is why I kept bringing up the point about what was happening in this country 30 years ago when I first came here. The numbers of people coming then were about 40 to 50,000 a year. 55,000, I think, in 1996. It's still like 300-something thousand now, which is way too high, particularly given the cumulative impact of mass immigration that we've had. So both Labour and not both Labour, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives have all failed on this. All the mainstream politicians have failed on this for the reasons that I gave you.
Sure,
and let me address the point
right?
about reform.
Like
let me
the Labour or the Conservative Party, the Tories failed far, far, far more.
No, it started with the Blair government. So more people came under the Blair government. Let me just lay this out.
I agree. We're going Boris wave after. It seems like the Tories failed hardcore.
They
with
both
immigration
failed
stuff.
in exactly the same way.
Okay, so you would say as of right now, if you could flip a coin and have the Tories continue, okay, versus the Labour government, that they would both perform the same on immigration?
I think probably very likely similar. Yeah, absolutely.
And how would we feel that way? What's the evidence of that?
Sorry?
Why would we feel that way? What would we look to in reality that would inform that?
I think the numbers were going to come down, whoever was in charge. I don't think the numbers this year have come down because the Labour government has come in. I think they were likely to come down anyway. My point is something else. Immigration under both governments is way too high, particularly given its cumulative impact over time. But your point about a few Tories defecting to reform, it's not all these Tories. It's like 3 or 4 people in terms of the MPs. They were all people who would have been pretty hawkish about immigration and when they were in power tried to do something about it and were prevented from doing anything about it by their own party, which is why they're now moving to reform. So yeah, I voted... I think I voted for the party I voted most for in my life are the Liberal Democrats. Second most would be Labour. I think I might have voted. Yeah, I think I voted Conservative once, and yeah, I've never voted Reform. So,
okay, I guess when I look at, so here's a question. I guess when it comes to the immigration thing, let's say that for the next 5 years. We could float this idea of capping immigration at 30 or 40,000 per year to the UK, but it would mean I won't say severe, but somewhat of a degradation or a continued degradation of the services that the NHS provides, and then an increase in the cost of education, that the costs are going to continue to go up, but we can cut the amount of immigrants coming in as a result of that. Do you think that's a trade? Is it a trade that you would support? And do you think it's a trade that most British people would support?
I definitely think it's a trade that most British people would support, but I also don't think that that is actually what would happen. I mean, first of all, given the
You're
decline
so fucking
in
far
birth
off
rates
of
that
any
we are now
topic.
seeing, schools are shutting anyway, so you don't need foreign teachers to teach British children. That's not really happening. In terms
like
of
foreign students for money, right?
Hold on, but you mean for universities?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, foreign students are coming in and paying fees and then going back to their country. I think it's totally fine. I've got no problem with that. We're exporting a British service. No issue with that at all. But in terms of the NHS, I do think it would have a short-term impact on the NHS, but we have to train British people to do those jobs, inevitably so. And that short-term impact will be disruptive, but it will be worth it. But my broader point to you about mass immigration beyond specific shortages in specific industries, which, by the way, are exaggerated. You've got to remember, right, in what is effectively a market economy, when you have a shortage of labor, what that does is increases the wages that people are willing to offer people to do those jobs, and that then creates more people who come in and do those jobs. So
I'm kind of
what-
waiting for him to
increases the cost
topic
of those
change.
services,
yeah, of
right?
course.
Then we can put a pin in this.
But because British people are being paid properly to do those jobs, to me, that's a trade-off that's perfectly worth it.
The cost will ultimately rise more than there will be a concentrated industry that might be paid a little bit better, but the cost overall of the things, so like the NHS,
wages
would
for
increase.
British people will go up, which will help them to be able to afford other things that they want, right? I am perfectly happy for British NHS staff and doctors to be paid better. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I think the question would be, is it worth the trade-off of a degradation of NHS services, which is what would happen.
I don't know that it would lead to long term. I think short term, of course, it would be disruptive. I don't think long term it would lead to a degradation of NHS services at all. You would have
I think the last I
a
checked
highly paid workforce of British people who are trained in this country to be doctors and nurses. I think that would be incredible, and that's what we should be aiming for. But the broader point I'm making to you is take the NHS and other shortages that you might create in this way out of it. The bulk of the people who've come over the last 30 years are not supporting themselves financially to the point where it's worth our time bringing them in. And that's the problem.
Even the bulk of the legal immigrants, you don't think are worth it financially or economically?
The bulk of the wave of low-skilled and no-skilled immigration and dependence that we have had is not economically beneficial to us. We should be welcoming people in who are economically beneficial, and as part of the wave that we've had over the last 30 years, some of those people have been economically beneficial. Great, let's bring those people in, but let's not bring in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are net takers of tax revenue and also are more likely to be doing other things that we don't want.
So
let's do final thoughts.
Just a quick question. What do you think then is the incentive of a conservative government to bring in more immigrants, if not to desperately fill jobs that they feel the economy is going to be lacking?
We talked about it earlier, didn't we?
Well, yeah, but when I checked
pretend the economy is growing when it's not. That's the incentive.
But if they're net takers of everything, wouldn't this would increase your debt and your deficits?
No,
it would
what
hurt
happens? Well, no, what happens? The way to think about it is like this. Let's say that you're a family, you've got a wife, 2 kids, right? And you have a total household income of £100,000. Okay, and your wife says we need to grow our household income. Let's bring my parents in. Let's bring the in-laws in. They earn 20,000 a year collectively together. So you bring in, now your household income is 120,000, except you now have to divide it among 6 people instead of 4 people. That's what they've done. They are the wife that says, let's bring the in-laws in so we can pretend our household income is growing.
I understand the analogy, but I feel like it would be more you have a household of 4 people, and then there's also some kind of work that needs to be done. Maybe you need grandma to knit, and you need grandpa to mow the grass or something. And if you can't afford to do it, you have to hire out somebody else to do it.
Yeah, but you can't pretend you're getting richer. You're getting poorer because you now have to feed 2 more people.
Yeah, but if you didn't bring those people in, the cost for everything would be so much higher that at the end of the day...
It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Okay, this is a mean question, but just to push, because it's frustrating because but in every single part of the world where this is tried, it is the case that bringing in even low-skilled immigration bolsters every part of your economy, with some exceptions, especially in Europe and the UK, where you have weird rules around like asylum seekers not being allowed to work for a year for whatever reason, which I think is a whole other issue to bring up. But this idea that if we just cut off immigrants, all of our native people can just work these jobs and it'll be fine. Like, I hear this rhetoric from so many people all over the world, and this has never worked anywhere ever.
Well, if bringing in 8 million people, as we've done, boosts your economic growth, then why aren't we growing?
Well, I think Brexit hurt quite a bit. Number one, I think number 2...
We're doing better than other European countries, which, by the way, have also done mass immigration. The reason our economy isn't growing...
I'm pointing it out. Your goal wouldn't be to other European countries. Your goal would be compared to where the United Kingdom could be otherwise. And I know that for all of your issues with EU immigrants from Eastern Europe or whatever, you've basically replaced all of those now with a high amount of just Indian and Pakistani immigrants, which earlier seemed like...
Didn't let him do it. He asked the question, why isn't our economy doing well then? And Destiny was about to list off a bunch of things because economies are complicated and it's not just one thing solves it and one thing breaks it. But before he could start listing things off, he got one thing out with Brexit. And he got interrupted with like a bad comparison to other countries that when he should be comparing it to where Britain should be. Like, This is so
the
fucking
ones that have the biggest
trash.
problems with. So it seems like in terms of immigration or getting the types of labor that you would want to this country, that was pretty significantly
Yeah, Brexit
impacted.
didn't do on immigration what people wanted it to do.
Yeah,
It's
so-
one of the reasons I didn't vote for it, just remember.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, should we move
All
on?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next topic. Is Trump's approach to political issues
We'll save it for later. I'll make early chat and have to deal with it on Monday or something. I should do more politics. Or more specifically, debate breakdown. That my brain sits better in that space. If I go political, it's just the Dow. Give me a certified banger. Give me Get Money. I don't think I'm gonna have anywhere I'm gonna want to raid tonight. Someone on front page has PCG. Interesting.
Hey boy.
Shit.
Hey boy.
Evie needs lots of help. Double medicine. She's healthy.
Yippee. Bye-bye.
Love this song.
Emma. Yippee. Emma.
Yeah, look at that. Front page. PCG. Crazy that. You're so bright. You wanna be here tonight? Let's do some outro-age. Let's do the link tree real quick. Chat, there's a link tree. It's got links. You're gonna learn. If you click on the link tree link, it takes you all my links. You got the YouTube over here. We try and get our VODs uploaded every night and sorted into playlists for your viewing pleasure. You got the Discord and the Blue Sky. My stream announcements go out to the Discord and the Blue Sky. But if you like good hangs, good memes, and pictures of cute EVs I find on Reddit, go to the Discord. Scroll down a little more. You got the community information document. It has anything and everything you might want to know about the stream, the bot and the programming, community rules, drama shit we've covered, all the different games in the bot, other general information, and the Pokemon tier list that I made. Love that Pokemon tier list. Scroll down a bit more, you get all of our music playlists. You got the YouTube Type Beats playlist for when I'm doing music stuff. You got my Spotify profile, which will take you to all my Spotify playlists, but these 4 are the ones that we're usually listening to on stream. And you scroll down a bit more and you got a bunch of shit I have but don't use. We did it. Take me a webcam scene. Let me change the color of the room. Bring me the red lights. Bring me the flamingo. Yo. Get the child's eyeball. No more. I need to like stick something in this to declog it. We have flamingoed. Give chat a round of applause for hanging out, lurking along, chatting along, doing their thing. Appreciate y'all. Boop, boop, boop. Talk chatting, blankets are important. I appreciate everyone hanging out, lurking along, chatting along, doing their thing. Hope everyone has a good day, good night, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good sleep, good work, good day off, good time zone, good whatever it is, a good one. Stay safe out there, no drownsies, fuck vegetables. But which vegetables? Peas. We'll do peas again. Peas fucking suck. Fuck peas. What? Oh, at the end of every stream, we choose an enemy vegetable for until next stream. Fake news? No. 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 Vegetables are bad, Temp. They'll hurt you. They're not good for you, especially peas. Peas are the worst. They're little vomit pods. 100% of people die after eating vegetables. Exactly. Statistically proven. I'm surprised they weren't... That stat didn't get brought up in the debate. Fucking Vape's dead. So I hopped up, I made launched up, I ate some pasta, then I gave my mom hugs, and then I thought, it's gonna be a pretty nice night. But pretty isn't everything, right? Golden State in mind. I'm taking my time. Putting light skirt and a skinny black tie. On top left down when I get picked up. PCH, so California. Life is too fun. Love this song. We'll be back tomorrow at 12:30 to get ready for the forecast podcast with Monkey. 5 and out. We love the podcast. It's a goddamn shame. It's a goddamn shame. It's a goddamn shame. It's a goddamn shame. I think that's about all the things, though. So we'll take a final ripperino, and we'll get on out of here. Cheers, y'all.